So let's start off by understanding the digital ecosystem in India. India has a population of roughly about 1.3 billion people globally. We've got about 375 million active internet users as on date. We're also anticipating that this number over the next 5 or 6 years is anticipated to double to move to almost 750 million internet users. And why this becomes important for us to understand is because it shows the huge opportunity for penetration. Just to draw a comparison, does anyone know how many Indians watch television? The number is 754 million Indians who watch television every month, which means that in a few years, if digital manages to get to that 750 million number, digital will actually be as important as television will be in this country. We've got about 303 million active mobile internet users. Of these, about 200 million are smartphone users. The rest of them are actually feature phone users, which is still a large market to be considered for when we build product. Let's look at the time spent with media. So the average daily use of the internet via PC or tablet is about 4 hours and 22 minutes. The average daily use on a mobile phone is about 3 hours and 7 minutes. If you looked at this statistic exactly 1 year ago, the number of hours spent on a mobile device was actually under 2 hours. So it just goes to show how the trend of mobile consumption has increased dramatically, with a 50% increase just from last year to this year. The average daily use of social media via devices is 2 hours, and the average daily television viewing time is 1 hour 52 minutes. Clearly illustrating how television has now taken a back seat, and what used to be the behest and the backbone for all advertising in India has now far been superseded by digital and by technology and by devices. So let's contextualize digital to large numbers. 1.3 billion people in India. Almost 130 million Indians on Facebook. Facebook is actually the second, India is actually the second largest Facebook market in the world. And believe it or not, the United States is actually a degrowing Facebook market. The United States actually degrows on Facebook by 8% every month, which means that people are actually dropping off from Facebook in the US because it's getting oversaturated. But in India, India is a fast growth Facebook market, and believe it or not, 80% of all people who get onto Facebook are getting onto Facebook from mobile. We've got about 31 million LinkedIn users. I spoke about LinkedIn very briefly in the morning, and LinkedIn from a social networking standpoint is actually the highest from a time spent perspective. So people actually spend the most amount of time on LinkedIn in comparison to Facebook and Twitter. And the reason I'm giving you these insights is because it's important to understand what consumer psychologies are when they get onto the internet. When you build product, when you want to integrate social into product, it's important to understand how people are thinking. Twitter, on the other hand, is not as developed. Twitter constitutes about 18 million Indians on Twitter and is therefore a lot more conversational in nature. Now let's look at understanding how advertising spends in India work. And why is this important for you guys to understand? So I was speaking to someone over lunch, and they were telling me that they're making a website and they're having a hard time monetizing that website. And I'm sure that must either be a problem for a lot of you or for your clients, saying मैंने product बना दिया पर मैं ये product को monetize कैसे करूं? Now the problem with monetizing it is that we all sitting in this room who are making and building digital products are all fighting for a spend that comes out of this pie. And let's understand that pie. You see that number in the center of the screen, 57,000 crores? That is the overall spend on advertising in India across platforms. So we are less than 60,000 crore rupees on annual advertising spends across all mediums. Just to give you some context, India is a country of 1.3 billion people. Let's imagine that if I had to hold my hands up, India was this big, and India spends 57,000 crores on advertising a year. If I have to draw a comparison, Oman is this big, but Oman still spends 60,000 crore rupees a year on advertising. So just to throw some context and light on how India is a very small market as far as advertising is concerned. Now if you go back to look at the constitution of how this money gets broken up, you notice that television of course manages to occupy a large chunk of this 57,000 crores, with roughly about half. Right? And you look at digital. Digital stacks at about 7,300 crores, give or take. And 7,300 crores is less than 14% of the overall pie. On an average, an organization says that we are spending about 7 to 10% of our annual marketing spends on our digital products, on our digital advertising. And that just goes to show that everyone sitting in this room here today is fighting for that same $1 billion, right? That number up there is exactly $1 billion. So the size of our industry today is a $1 billion industry, which is a peanut-sized industry. So whatever we do, we are all fighting for that same $1 billion. What is the scope of digital, right? So we're talking about products and how these products can become more experiential, they can become more engaging, how they can keep users engaged with for a long period of time. And therefore, we need to understand the dynamicity of what digital entails today. These products are, so let's imagine that your website used to sit at the center or the fulcrum of any digital media marketing campaign, right? People would do, someone sat in the front and said, we used to do search solutions for our clients. Someone spoke about SMM over there, saying that eventually what we're doing is we are marketing our website and we are driving traffic back to this website because it becomes the one central focal point where I manage to transact, sell my product, engage with my user, build equity with my customer. But today I think the importance of the entire ecosystem is very important to understand when you do build product, when you do consult with your customers and your consumers in terms of what their longer term strategies should be once they build the product, when they start brainstorming through and through the entire cycle. So you've got social, which is obviously the most popular form of engagement on digital today. Search, you got your website, you got mobile advertising, display advertising, video, emailer, and ORM.